And like I said,
Sorry.
no, you're good. Like I said, we were hoping to be in person, but just didn't quite work out this time. So we're happy to have you all virtually. So the best as we know how to do networking virtually is we're going to kind of just do similar last time because there are some new faces or at least new names that we'll just do a quick intro. So if you just, I'm going to just read across kind of the order in my screen and again, just quick name and maybe who you work for. Mike, I'm actually going to skip over you because I'm going to have you go last and do kind of your own bio intro to the presentation.
No problem.
Okay, so Matt Zollinger.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Zollinger. I work here at Larson and Company. I'm a senior audit manager. Been here for about 9 years. Anything else, Allison, or is that?
No, that's good. If there's any other fun facts people want to share, feel free, but we'll only force you to give us your name and where you're at. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Salakrup. I work for ACAP Holdings in New York, and we have been a client of Larson's for a really long time. I don't know how long. And Matt invites me to these things, and I really appreciate it because I don't get too much continuing education these days, so it's great.
Great. Diane.
Hi, Diane Nesbitt with Larson and Company, and I am an insurance audit partner and wishing we were in person today, but glad we still all know how to use Zoom, right? Thanks, Allison.
Beata.
Hi, this is Beata Turcato. I work for a Landcar agency, Landcar Casualty. We're part of Larry Miller Group, the dealerships, and I've been with the company almost 4 years.
Great. And Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Bailey, and I work with WMI Mutual Insurance and do the accounting and finance for our company. And I've been with WMI just over 5 years. So that kind of sums it up.
Perfect. Okay, Jerry.
Hello, Jerry Douglas with Larson and Company, another audit partner. Been here for too many years. I'm not going to tell you how long. Over 30 years, let's put it that way.
Great. Amy. Oh, maybe Amy, if you have audio, you're on mute.
See, Amy just, oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's Amy Homer with WMI Mutual.
Great. Jason.
I'm Jason Parker. I'm at Larson and Company and have been here for 6 years. I'm a tax manager and my office is really bad lighting. I've been told it looks like I'm in the witness protection program, but I'm here. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Those little lights are great. Margot, you're next. For anyone who doesn't know Margot, but
I'm Margot Anderson. I'm the marketing director here at Larson and Company. I do have a light, so you can all see me, and I'm not in the witness protection program. That was a good one, Jason. And I am excited to see you guys. It's been one of those years with Larson where we're like, we really want to see our clients, and every time we try, we sort of have to say, we'll see you on a screen. So I sure appreciate all of you guys being here today. This is going to be a fun one.
okay. David. I think this is.
Hi, I'm Dave Scupp. I'm with a workers' comp company in Bradenton, Florida. And used to work with Mike when I was with a company in Michigan.
Perfect. Okay, next on my screen is Dave Leo, who has informed me he doesn't have audio, so I'll introduce him. So Dave Leo's with WMI. He's the president of WMI and's been there 24 years. So we're excited to have them on. Matt Parker.
Hello, I'm Matt Parker. I am at WCF Insurance, and I've been there about 3 years.
Great. Kevin.
I'm Kevin Brown. I am with Larson & Company. I've been here about 9 years now, and I'm a senior manager.
Great. Cherie.
My name's Cherie Mon. I've been with Larson & Company going on 10 years, and I am the accounting manager in our Moab office.
Great. Blaine.
Yeah, I'm Blaine Moon, CFO at Work First Casualty Company in Salt Lake.
Tori.
Hi, I'm Tori Nickel. I'm an audit senior here at Larson. I've been here about 4 years, and I'm excited to be here.
Karsten.
Hi, I'm Karsten. I work for Karsten and Company. Been there about 7 months. That's it.
Great. Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nate Taylor. I work with WCF Insurance, and been here about 4 years now.
Great. And we actually have two Nathans, so we'll have the other as well. You're good, Nate. Looks like you're unmuted, Nathan, but I can't hear you. Okay, maybe some audio troubles. I'll give a brief intro maybe for Nathan too. Nathan's with Elite Guarantee and Elite Warranty and Allied Guarantee out of Springville. So auto warranty. And there is someone on the phone that I don't have a name for, but if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great. Maybe not. Maybe that's someone who had called in.
That looks like Martha's cell phone.
It's impressive. Well, we'll assume Martha. Probably most people on this phone also know Martha. So, okay, with that, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to you to introduce yourself and then just dive on in.
All right, fair enough. So I'm Mike Kollath. I've got a long history in the insurance industry. I used to work for RSM or McGladrey or whatever they were called, doing audits, tax, and consulting for insurance companies. Then I went into industry for another 8 years or so. The company got bought out and I ended up going out on my own, starting my firm. And so we've gone from me, myself, and I as the entire firm to now we're about 32 people, and we get up to maybe 35, 36 during tax season. So we don't do audit, comps, reviews. We primarily do more of the back end processing, a lot of outsourced accounting. We do a good number of tax returns, payroll, and those types of things. The insurance industry has been a focus of ours since the beginning. We work with some larger companies here in town, and then we also work with smaller insurance companies outsourcing either portions or all of their accounting and reporting. So I'm excited about this topic. We are firm believers in using automation to your benefit. We do a lot of the outsourced accounting, as I said. So our pretty standard stack that we use is bill.com. Hooked up with either Intact or QuickBooks Online. Then we bolt on all the bank feeds, credit card feeds, and it really reduces the amount of time that there's actually spent on entering transactions. We'll talk about artificial intelligence a little bit later, but QuickBooks Online and Bill.com both use AI to figure out how to code transactions and where entries should go. So that really reduces the amount of time that is spent on doing the day-to-day stuff and allows you to do a lot more analysis and helping out the client. And we do outsourced accounting for a variety of companies, from nonprofits to law firms to those types of companies. And then on the insurance side, we work with both companies and insurtechs, and that's been a relatively new thing for us. The insurtechs are very interesting, trying to put a much more technology-related spin on the insurance world. So that's been definitely a different animal from a normal insurance company. So I would like to thank Larson for inviting me. We've had a good relationship over the years. I was actually CFO for a company that they audited. I've actually been out to Utah a couple times and seen them. And actually I'm coming out there in but a month, so for vacation. So anyway, I want to encourage people, if they want to ask questions, I don't know if if they can do it in chat or whatever, or just start talking and we can go from there. So if you want to be interactive, certainly, I understand there's a lot of people and we are accountants, so that may or may not be something people want to do, but I guess we'll get started. So I am going to share my screen.
While you do that, Mike, we'll let people, I'll kind of monitor the chat. So if you don't want to unmute, I'll keep an eye on it and I'll be the one to interrupt if we have questions.
All right, can everybody see that? Yes, no? Anyone?
No, we can't see your screen yet.
No.
You can't?
No.
I thought we had this solved. Let me try it again.
Right.
Share screen, screen one. How's that look?
There you
Is
go.
that better?
Yep. We got
All
it.
right, cool. Well, the first screen, not too much exciting there. So I think when you're looking at automation in the finance and accounting area, obviously the first question is, why do you want to do it? I think that's pretty obvious, and we'll talk about it in a second. I think step two would then be look at what you currently have, right? What are your processes, document them, and understand where are the inefficiencies coming in your current processes, where are data handoffs happening, rather than it automatically being pushed from one system to the other. How do journal entries get into the system? Those kinds of things. And I think another thing that's good to always consider is a lot of us have software that we use and we don't use even 50% of its functionality. So I think looking at what you currently have and what automation aspects to it may have already is always worth doing that, rather than going out and spending money on a different software for CRM or whatever you may be looking at to enhance your system. Step four, we're going to talk about a bunch of tools that could make it easier. And then the last one is implementation. I am not going to talk at all about that because I think everybody understands kind of how implementations are done, and I don't think these are any different than any other implementation would be. So I think it is pretty obvious. Efficiency is the key, and accuracy. So anytime a human being gets involved, you have the possibility of a mistake being made. And efficiency, the faster you can get things done, it allows you to do higher level work. Analysis versus entry, I think, is the key to look at there. So examining and documenting processes. So this is where my audit background comes in. You can look at your books either by process, of claims process, underwriting process, and basically trace into how does information get into your ledger, right? And so a lot of times if you're audited, you're going to have a decent, at least start to that, but really getting down to the nitty gritty of, as I said before, okay, so I get information out of the policy admin system. I get a report out of there, someone manually enters that, or I dump it into a spreadsheet. And in the spreadsheet, I manipulate the data. Then I put that into a journal entry, and that gets entered into the system, right? So getting down to that level of detail as to where does the data start and where does it end, and what are the steps in between there. And so systems and data handoffs are always, from an auditor standpoint, it's a point of concern because that's where information can get, you can have the wrong data going in, or maybe not all the data goes in, or maybe too much data goes in. It also, I think, provides you a good opportunity to ask, why am I doing this particular process? And sometimes going from the endpoint where your financial statements back to where the information comes from, there may be pieces of that process that you wonder, well, why am I doing this? There's no value to it. I'm not really getting any numbers out of it. So it provides you an opportunity to really understand, why am I doing a particular thing? And I think when we go through these processes, we ask these questions, and sometimes it is, I don't know why we do this. No one uses the data, but we've always done it that way. And so just going through a process like this, whether or not you automate some of it, can result in some more efficiency and possibly redeploying people to do other work. And then, as we had talked about, do your systems have the ability to integrate? Maybe when you bought your system, it was 10 years ago, right? And they have added enhancements to that system. You didn't know that. And maybe they added a different system that you may be able to use that you weren't currently using. Or it has the ability to integrate with other systems through an API or something like that. So that's another aspect of that process, I think, that is useful. So another key to this is looking at your current software, as we talked about, and then also staff capabilities. So once you start getting technology involved, and I think a lot of companies have the situation where you have people who may not be comfortable with technology. And so you've got to go through the process of getting your staff on board, understanding what you're trying to do, and then also getting management on board with what you're trying to do in order to get that efficiency that you're looking for. But obviously people are an aspect of your business, and they're an aspect of the processes that you have. And if they are not comfortable with technology and you're going to be asking them to use technology, that may be something to consider in that when you're looking at this. So what kind of tools are out there? So there's APIs, we'll talk about them in a second. There's robotic process automation, or RPA. AI and machine learning is another interesting thing. And I think you'll find that some of your software actually has some of this already built in. And so you may not know it in the background, and these sound like real high concept things, but when we get to like robotic process automation, it was always this like weird intangible thing. I'm like, I don't understand what it does. Is there like a tiny little robot that runs around inside your systems? No, it's software is all it is. And so considering web-based accounting software, as I'd mentioned before, QBO, Intact, NetSuite, there's a number of different accounting software products that are web-based that can that are pretty technology enabled and can talk to other systems. Automated bill payments, bill.com, there are others out there that you can use for bill pay rather than writing your own checks. Automated receivable collection systems, again, maybe they can talk to the policyholder, send them an email pretty regularly if they haven't paid their bill yet. Perhaps credit cards can be accepted right online to eliminate the manual processing of credit cards. Bank integration is a big one. And I know commercial accounts tend, especially at the bigger banks, tend not to have the ability to talk to your ledger system, but bank reconciliations definitely become much easier if you can feed that data right into your system rather than having to hand enter it into your system, whether it be deposits or checks written or that kind of thing. And then credit card integration on the other side. So if you do have a pretty sizable number of credit card transactions with your company, again, can you integrate that with your ledger rather than manually entering it? And then hopefully the ledger can pick up pretty quickly, depending on who the vendor is going through the credit card, understanding what ledger account that should be coded to. And then you can, once you get through the transactional type stuff, you can look at dashboarding, budgeting, and forecasting. There are all kinds of tools that can aggregate data from various systems to help you do KPIs and those kinds of things. So that's just in general, the types of tools that are out there. On the accounting side, you tend to see a delineation between either ERP systems versus just accounting software. So QBO, Intacct tend to be purely accounting software, while both of them have other software that they integrate with. It is not self-contained in their in the QuickBooks and Intacct world. So you kind of bolt on the pieces that you need into those softwares. Now, NetSuite is a full ERP system, Dynamics 365, which is Microsoft, both full ERP systems, meaning they can handle HR, they can handle payroll, they can handle, if you're a manufacturer, it can take it from PO to inventory to sale. So they tend to be much more integrated internally. They also are much more expensive. And so you're generally talking somewhere 6 figures plus for those types of, plus a significant implementation time. Whereas the more straight up, just general ledger type products tend to be much easier to get going and get them going fairly quickly. So other tools that I see used out in the working world rather than the accounting firm world. Solos, I don't know if anybody uses Eagle Wings for their annual statement software, quarterly statement software. They also do premium tax software. It's hosted online, which it makes it very helpful. And I know they're very open to integrating with other systems. And so in the case study for robotic process automation, I'll talk a little bit about them. Blackline assists with the financial close and reconciliation, sign-offs, those kinds of things. So it helps out with audit documentation and helps automate your close on a monthly basis. It also integrates with NetSuite, who we saw shortly before. Fathom and Domo are software pieces where they have the ability to aggregate data from different sources. So let's say from your policy admin system, you want for your KPIs or things that you monitor, perhaps something from your CRM system, pieces from your general ledger system. It allows you to pull in data from different sources and then put them in, I don't know, for lack of a better term, pretty, make them look pretty, graphs and those kinds of things, rather than what us accountants generally like, which is a straight up spreadsheet. So it makes it more user-friendly from a management standpoint, and helps you monitor on a more real-time basis of what's going on in the business. Talked about Bill.com. I'm a huge fan of Bill.com from a bill pay standpoint and from an audit standpoint. It is bill pay software from a process standpoint. You basically upload an invoice, you code that invoice to what account you want it to go to, whether it be prepaids or expense. It then has internal logic to approve. So it'll send it, if anything over $5,000 needs to be approved by this particular person, anything over $25,000 needs to be approved by a different person, and then anything over 100 has to be approved by the president or CEO or whoever it is. It has that ability. In addition, it has some fraud benefit to it in that they are actually cutting checks off of their check stock rather than your check stock. So from a fraud standpoint, it's excellent. And it also allows you to either write a check, or they write the check, or you can do ACH payments to your vendors, which is very nice. They also have an AR component to it. I have not heard as good of things about the AR component, but I know they just bought a company that does that specifically, that they're going to be integrating in. Bill.com also just bought Divvy, which is a corporate credit card, which allows you a very granular level of ability to control specific users, what they can spend it on. And it also integrates with multiple ledger packages, so it automatically dumps the information in. It also has a approval routing and those kinds of things within it. And then Concur and Expensify are two essentially expense reporting pieces of software that are, and all of these are online essentially. They are not server based. So for example, Expensify, someone would scan their receipts, it would route it to an approver, and then it would automatically dump into your accounting software. It also has some AI built into it, so it starts to recognize a certain vendor, then it will code it without you having to code it. It also learns over time what has been denied as an expense and will help you spit those out as exceptions over time. So it has some pretty cool stuff that it can do, and it can be helpful from an automation standpoint and an approval standpoint. So we talked about APIs, or application programming interface. So an API basically allows two systems to talk. Typically it's taking, like a good example would be Travelocity, right? So Travelocity, you want to get a flight. So Travelocity will go to use an API. So Delta and United and American or whoever has an API in their end that allows their Travelocity software to pull the data out and then put it into their software, and that's how you get the information. So APIs are very common amongst insurtechs, fintechs, and especially when you're talking to other systems. So it eliminates a lot of manual entry, right? So Travelocity would have to hire people to go in, go to Delta's site, go to the other sites, pick the date, pick the times, blah, 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 for the flights, get the price back, and then put it into their system. Instead, the API allows it to be very simple and quick. On the bad side, it does create potential security problems. So it's one of the most common places where people hack into a system. It's expensive to do, and you need expertise for that. Are there any questions or anything? Snide remarks? I'll take anything. No? All right. So oops. Oh, shoot. I found this article, and now it's not. Wait, let's just bounce out. Here we go. It's from McKinsey, and I found this chart to be actually very interesting, and I hope you do too. So it just basically lists what, from an automation standpoint, are the easiest things to do and the hardest things to do. So as you can see, general accounting operations, journal entries, those kinds of things, cash disbursement, revenue management, the controllership work, and external reporting, all are fairly high, a little bit on the tax side too, and FP&A. When it gets to things that are a little more judgment-based, it tends not to lend itself as well to automation. But I thought it was a very interesting article, and it can give you a kind of a roadmap to where your lowest hanging fruit would be if you're looking to do that kind of automation. All right, let's pop back. Oh, I'm gonna have to jump out again. I also found, when you're talking about AI, so Thomson Reuters is a pretty common company that everybody knows. I thought this was kind of an interesting little graphic as to how AI works and what it is. So this is how you can use it. You use AI every day, especially when you have the talking on the phone to a robot, essentially. It kind of understands the words you're saying and then points you in the direction it can go. So it's all about the computer being able to adapt to different circumstances. And so it's obviously one of the highest levels of technology and software that's out there, but eventually it can help out with decision making. But I thought that was an interesting little chart and breaks it down to kind of simply so you can understand it. All right, so we work with a client here in Madison. They are a $28 billion in asset company. They do both P&C and life, about $4 billion in revenue. And so the controller is a good friend of mine. And they, about 3 years ago, I think they took up a RPA project. And so this is where I always was, it seems so intangible and so difficult to figure out, well, what is it? And what it comes down to is it's a really simple concept of anything that a human is doing that involves spreadsheets or taking data from this place to this place to this place and manipulating it can be done using robotic process automation. All it is a piece of software that someone programs. They call them scripts in this case. And it allows you to do functions, and you'll see in a minute what those look like. So it eliminates a lot of the repetitive stuff that you have to do, frees up your employees to do different stuff, reduces errors because it's automated rather than you doing it by hand, and then it's also going to be quicker than a human being could be. On the bad side, if your underlying process is not good, you're just automating a bad underlying process. Implementation time and money. I think their project has been going on for 3+ years. And I'll get to some of the money aspect of it in a second. If you do have changes, the one thing the robotic process automation is bad at is if things change. So if you have a different piece of data, if things get off by a column, those changes are going to essentially render the robot irrelevant, and you'll have to go back and reprogram it to do it right. And then, as always, if you put in garbage, you're going to get garbage out. So they embarked on this project, identified a few areas, and took on journal entries as kind of the first piece of it. So they hired Blue Prism for the robotics part of it, essentially to help them write these scripts, they call it. And so the first step was the documentation I talked about. So they documented all the journal entries and all the steps to get to all of their journal entries. Now, these are all the monthly journal entries. They do not ad hoc entries or entries that aren't done on a regular basis. So then they worked with this Blue Prism in order to write the scripts to automate the manual work. So for example, they would have a process where perhaps the actuaries would email them a spreadsheet, which they would then save, put into another spreadsheet to convert it into a journal entry. Then they would upload manually the journal entry into the system. And so they basically wrote a script that the bot would go out there. It would look for this email from this particular person. It would grab that email, take the file out of it, save it somewhere, copy the file into a tab in a spreadsheet that generates the journal entry. And then once it put that information in, the journal entry would actually have some checks in it. It would verify that the checks within the spreadsheet were 0. Basically, they had this binary, either if it's a 1, it's bad. The journal entry is either not balancing or it's not giving you what you expected, or a 0, if it was all zeros. Then the bot would actually upload the journal entry into the general ledger. And so that's fascinating, right? It's interesting that you can have a robot essentially, or a software robot, download an email, save the file, and do those processes. The key they found was having, so they initially went through and tried to do unique scripts for each journal entry. They quickly found that that was not efficient, and it was confusing, and they were doing a lot of maintenance on each script because things would change. So what they decided to do, and to reduce their reliance on this Blue Prism company, they decided that their accountants know spreadsheets. And so they standardized the spreadsheet. So essentially it would take, no matter what it was, they would have the robot dump information into a tab within. Their accountants would manipulate the data in another tab, not manually, but they would set it up with whether it's VLOOKUPs or whatever they were doing before, but they would put that into that particular spreadsheet so that it could spit out the journal entry. So it did two things. It standardized things, and it put a little more of the work on their people, so they're not paying the outside consultants to do it. And so all the scripts are pretty much the same that run. It may be whether it's at 8 o'clock on the Monday after the month end, it goes in and gets this particular report in an Excel format that's automatically generated, pulls it into the spreadsheet, then uploads the journal entry. So it was very interesting to me the way they did that. So it essentially took out all human interaction from those journal entries. So then they also implemented an auto approval process of those. So the bot would then go and look at, okay, what are the last 8 months worth of this journal entry and what did it look like? And they would set tolerances within that. And if it's within the tolerance of the last 8 months journal entries, it would auto approve. So rather than having, someone upload the journal entry and manipulate the data to get it in there, and then a manager approving that journal entry, they would use those tolerances. So then once the robot or software looked at that, if it was within tolerance, it automatically got approved, no human intervention. So what they found was about 10% of the entries now kick out, rather than a manager reviewing hundreds of entries on a month end. About 10% of those are kicking out because they're out of tolerance. Now again, ad hoc entries not being done through this process. All right. So what they have done so far is, so they saw in their department that the manual stuff that was being done, that was probably the easiest things to look at, were journal entries, which we talked about. Then next is reconciliations. So when the journal entries are done, the robot also uploads the detail that was used for that journal entry into Blackline, which is what they use for their account recs. And so Blackline obviously looks at their general ledger, knows the ending balance. It then looks at, okay, Blackline looks at whether or not those match. If they match, great. So now you've done, if it didn't kick out at the journal entry level, now you've got a process that's not been touched at all by a person, and it's already gone through the reconciliation process. Again, it's going to kick out if it doesn't balance, but they've automated even just the uploading of the supporting data. Normally, and again, a manager would need to look at that in that, or another person within the company would have to look at it separate from the person who actually did the underlying journal entry. So that was a nice time saver for them too. They also use Wings, or Eagle, formerly Eagle, now Sophos, that we had talked about before, for their annual statement, quarterly statement, and their state filings. And so they worked with them to take the data from, again, all the pieces of the annual statement, you're going to have to get the data from somewhere, right? And so they wrote scripts that essentially took the report that was being used, popped it into this format that they could have, which would then get uploaded into the annual statement software. Either the robot would put the number, like on the balance sheet, where it needs to be, or if it's in the footnotes, it would put that table with the data into that footnote. So Schedule T, all the different pieces of the annual statement, they essentially now, the manager gets a pretty much completed quarterly or annual, rather than a human being actually going in and popping in all the numbers into the software. And so now I will say this was not without a lot of trial and error. And in order for it to get to where it is now, it took them quite a while. But it has worked very well for them. The audit report, like the actual Word document that ends up being the audit report from the auditors, I mean, they have multiple companies. Again, all they're doing is having the robot take the data you would have to get anyway, putting it into the Word document where it's supposed to go, and then populating the footnotes. And so obviously you have to look at the wording and make sure the wording changes. And if there are any accounting standard changes that you have to comply with, that would be a change. But it has pretty much automated their audit report. And then on the state filing side, they worked with Wings to make sure that you get the piece of data that you need to bring into that particular premium tax report. And it automatically goes from their system by a robot into the software for state filings, which is again Sovos, and then Sovos files those returns for them. So they have, for the most part, made that a automated process. Again, to jump back, the thing that the robots are bad at is if anything changes, they don't know. And so if something moves, if your data supplier, like the actuaries, change the spreadsheet that they give you, that's going to screw things up, and you have to modify the script in order to reflect actually what is where the data is now coming from. So I think the biggest takeaways that they had from this is don't customize the scripts, let Excel do the work, standardize everything, especially on the journal entry side. They tried to minimize the use of the RPA vendor because number one, they're expensive. Number two, if you can do the work in Excel, that's and your people can do it, that's better from an overall standpoint. And then the other piece was workflow software is kind of what runs the process. So the workflow software tells the robot essentially, hey, it's Monday morning at 8 o'clock, the day after, the first Monday after the month end. You need to go out and get this report at this time. Robot does their work, etc. And so the workflow software essentially is what tells the robot to do stuff, to make it in simple terms. So that was also an interesting aspect of it. They used BPM, I believe it is, for their workflow software. So what's the payoff? They reduced the department of 6 to 1 person. So they had 6 people doing journal entries and made it down to 1. Now that includes, I think, the other pieces that they were doing. Their audit reports, they used to bring in interns just to roll those things over, cut and paste things where they needed to be, change the dates, etc. All that's now done by a robot. They reduced their overall team by 40%. And they were able to dedicate more time to their technical accounting and financial analysis. So it's a pretty compelling use case, especially since they really didn't use their internal IT department at all. And they spent less than $500,000. So saving 5 people, you're gonna save $500,000 pretty quick. That is all I had, because I'm not going to talk about implementation. Anyone have any thoughts or any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So we talked about quite an array of, working from, just bill.com to work on, your cash disbursements all the way up to this robotic automation. From what you've seen in your array of clients, for someone maybe who, if it's a company who currently isn't doing any of this, maybe what are the top 2 or 3 areas you'd say, yeah, this is a good place to kind of step in, start to see some of the benefits before maybe looking all to the other end of the spectrum of robotic automation?
Sure. So bill.com to me is always the easiest thing to do. If it hooks into your general ledger, you're going to eliminate a lot of manual keying. nobody has to sign a check anymore. So you don't have to worry about if someone's on vacation or whatever it may be. It routes things automatically. They can approve them quickly. And the bank hookup to your general ledger is huge, and the credit card. I mean, those alone save hours and hours of time, even in a small company. So I think those are the easiest things to do. Even just getting things online. I mean, we've all been through this COVID thing, but using an online ledger has been very helpful for that, because they tend to have APIs that can talk. I mean, that's all really Bill.com does with QBO or Intact. They're just talking back and forth through an API. Now I know changing ledger systems also sucks. So that may not be as easy, but I think those other pieces are the easiest things to do.
Maybe kind of a follow-up, the other thought I was having is, so knowing this is largely the insurance audience, anything insurance specific as far as like things people are doing to reduce claims processing time, or more insurance specific that you're seeing at all?
Honestly, not a ton, but I don't get into that a lot. I will say, like, my InsurTechs, it's interesting that they have the exact same problem every other insurance company does. They just say they're using technology to do it. I will say they're a lot more progressive on the building little tools to make things easier. Like I'm not communicating this very well, like the underlying aspects that are difficult of a policy admin system, I don't think they're doing that any better. What I do think they're doing better is adapting the processes and getting like middleware almost to get to the end user better. I think that's their difference that they're making. But as far as claims and underwriting, they're not doing anything different. They may automate a little bit more of that, but I don't see it as a lot different. Except they're raising tons of money. Like ClearCover just raised 200 million.
Wow.
And they're just an auto insurance company. But they use technology, so it's sexy.
Any other questions from anyone in the group?
I have a question. So you talked a lot about making sure your people can do it. You know, if you're going to use technology and automation, make sure your staff can do that. How do you recommend training your staff? Do you utilize online software training specifically to that software? Do you recommend a consultant, or do you just do it in-house where there's someone who does know it that trains the other people? What do you think?
So I think the reason why in the example I used, they used Excel is because all their people know that, right? Now, like, let's say, for example, you have a person that just does daily bank recs, essentially, that's used to using bank software and a spreadsheet and looking at the ledger. That person might be a problem. I think what they found was that the people who didn't get technology just aren't going to get it. They had a hard time, getting them to adopt to the technology at all and understanding how it works. So I hate to say it, but I don't know that there's training that can fix that.
Right.
So what they did is they took the people they knew were a little more technology adaptive, and they used them for the project.
Makes sense. I can just see that being an issue where, it's
Yes.
hard to implement technology anyway. But then once you invest in it, how do you make sure your people know how to use it? And
yeah,
I think that's the trick. I don't know if anybody else on the call has had success with that.
I think you just hope they retire.
Hey, Mike, we're in the process of implementing a closing software package called Flowcast.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
I just wondered if anybody's used that and has it really saved time? It looks to us like it will.
I've not heard of anyone using that, but I've heard good things about it, like in general, but I don't know anyone specifically using it. So is it kind of like Blackline then?
A little bit, yeah. Yep. So we'll
Because
let
I
you
think
know after we get it installed.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some technology and I think robotic stuff involved in those and the way they work.
Any other questions for Mike? We did have a couple requests come in to share the slides. So Mike, if you're okay with that, if we get a copy, we'll send those out.
Definitely.
Afterwards. So you have those links to those articles as well as Mike's contact information for any other questions you may think of, or if you decide to go down one of those paths, he can help or connect to someone who maybe has done that before. Other than that, oh, go ahead.
No, I'll do that right now.
Oh, perfect. Other than that, Margot, I don't know if there's anything else we officially need to do other than saying thank you for taking some time out of your day. We appreciate it. And hopefully there was something today that maybe said, even if it's just, your cash disbursements automating, maybe you're a smaller accounting department and you can, eliminate some of that repetitive work. Hopefully something popped today that you can take back.
Thank you so much, Mike, for preparing this for us. It was really informative.
It's fun stuff.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you. November is when we're planning our next one. So you'll see some correspondence a little bit closer to that.
Great.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Allison.